This is the voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting. The voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran is broadcast daily from 1920 to 2020 UTC on the following frequencies. Shortwave, 25 meters, 11,880 kilohertz for Southern Africa, and FM 91.5 megahertz for Tehran. You can also listen to the voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran on IranSat or PAD5 and Intelsat 39 and via the Internet. Our Internet address is parstoday.ir/en. And now you can listen to IRIB English Radio via your mobile phone. Please refer to our website for the details.
This is IRIB English Radio. Coming up is the news.
Israel's surge attack killed more Palestinians in Gaza, with a death toll of top 37,200. The UN report says that Israel has committed war crimes and crimes against humanity against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And Hezbollah vows to intensify retaliatory attacks as the recent movements lays to rest a senior commander assassinated by the organization. Live from Tehran, this is World News. I'm your host, More Palestinians have lost their lives as the Israeli regime continues with a genocidal onslaught in defiance of international outcry. In the latest attacks, 14 people were killed across Gaza, including 6 in Gaza City, one residential building just destroyed. Regime forces keep pounding the strip and filling away with air and artillery strikes. The focal point of attack is now shifted to the southern tip of Rafah, attacked with displaced Palestinians. Despite the repeated calls of the UN and aid agencies, the regime keeps blocking life-saving humanitarian aid into Gaza. More than 37,200 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since the war began in early October. According to a UN report, at least 93,000 children are suffering from malnutrition. Gabriel Bala, our correspondent, is there and covering all these firsthand. So, Matei, tell us about the latest over there.
Yes, actually the Israeli occupation forces continue to commit perpetrate war crimes and atrocities against the Palestinian people in different parts of Gaza Strip. According to Gaza Health Ministry, that over the last 24 hours, the Israeli occupation forces committed at least 3 appalling massacres against the Palestinian people in Gaza Strip, claiming the lives of 38 Palestinians and injuring roughly 100 others. These numbers are still rising and soaring incrementally with the continuous Israeli attacks over the last couple of hours here in the central area of Gaza Strip. The Israeli warplanes carried out an airstrike against Al-Mughraga neighborhood, claiming the lives of 5 Palestinian civilians and injuring 8 others. They were transported to the Al-Awda hospital in Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, while in the eastern part of the central area of Gaza, basically Deir al-Balah city, the Israeli artillery maintained shelling those parts heavily over the last couple of hours. And even when it comes to Al-Zaytun neighborhood, the current situation is still tense amid the ongoing Israeli artillery shelling that is targeting that neighborhood. And it is just areas, particularly the southern part of Al-Zaytun neighborhood. When it comes to Rafah city, the current situation is still tense as the Israeli division forces are still pushing forward towards the western part of Rafah city. The Israeli attacks are still instant and heavy against those areas. More residential buildings were targeted and destroyed amid the chronic artillery shelling that is still maintained against those areas. Those attacks actually are pushing the Palestinian people to flee Rafah city to the north and to the central area of Gaza, which exacerbates the current situation here in the central area of Gaza. According to multiple eyewitnesses, that Al-Shabura neighborhood, these moments actually is witnessing fierce and drastic clashes between the Palestinian resistance and the Israeli occupation forces, which are still attempting to gain more control over more areas in Rafah city, while more residential buildings and Palestinian houses were detonated and blasted over the last couple of hours by the Israeli occupation forces. According to Gaza government media office, that 90% of the residential buildings in the eastern part of Rafah city were targeted and destroyed completely by the Israeli occupation forces, which is the same as systematic way the Israeli occupation forces are still using in order to decimate Gaza Strip and to flatten, the residential buildings to the ground in all areas of Gaza Strip. Basically, those areas that are still subjected to ground offensives in all areas of Gaza Strip.
Tim, would you could also tell us if there has been any improvement in the supply of humanitarian aid, food, water, hospital equipment?
Unfortunately, the current situation is still getting worse and worse as the Israeli occupation forces are still stalling and preventing any entry of those humanitarian supplies and humanitarian relief to any area of Gaza Strip. Unlike what is being promoted by the Israeli occupation forces, that they are still facilitating the entry of those humanitarian supplies, the people are still suffering on the ground. And as you know, the basic humanitarian supplies are dwindling severely and diminishing every moment. Basically, when it comes to the northern part of Gaza Strip and Gaza City, the famine is hitting nowadays once again. As you know, and the people are still starving in those areas as the Israeli occupation forces are still systematically preventing any entry of those humanitarian supplies to the people. The Israeli occupation forces are still adamant with their policy of using starvation as a weapon of war against 2.3 million Palestinian civilians. 70% out of them are from women and children.
All right. So that's Mutiago Musab, our correspondent live in Gaza City. Your report accuses Israel of committing war crimes against humanity, as well as carrying out a war of extermination against Palestinians in Gaza. The report is prepared by an independent commission with inquiries set up by the UN Human Rights Commission. The findings suggest that Israel deliberately and systematically targeted Palestinian civilians in breach of both international humanitarian and human rights law. Commission head Navi Pillay, a former UN rights chief, says that all those who have committed crimes must be held accountable. He says Palestinian resistance groups must end their rocket attacks on Israel and release the captives held in Gaza. Pillay also called on the Israeli regime to immediately end its genocidal war against Gaza. The Qatari Prime Minister says that a just solution to the war in Gaza should pave the way toward the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state.
And today we have discussed how to reach those sustainable solutions that bring the stability to Gaza and to our also brothers in the West Bank and to everyone that lives in this region. We believe that the sustainable solution is a just one, which is with the Palestinian state with the Jerusalem capital.
Sheikh Mohammed Al-Thani made the comments in a joint presser with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Doha. He emphasized the need for a permanent solution to the onslaught in Gaza rather than simply temporary measures. The U.S. top diplomat, for his part, addressed Hamas's response to the UN-backed ceasefire. Blinken said that some of the Palestinian groups' requested amendments are workable, but some aren't. So, we were waiting on one response, and that was the response from Hamas. And as the Prime Minister said, last night we received the response. Hamas has proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table. We discussed those changes last night with Egyptian colleagues and today with the Prime Minister. Some of the changes are workable, some are not. Blinken also added that there is no guarantee a possible ceasefire agreement would come true. The USA was taking it with the Qatari Prime Minister to discuss the Gaza ceasefire talks after Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad submitted a response to a UN-backed proposal to the mediators in Qatar in Egypt. Jordan has hosted an emergency conference on urgent response to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Participants stressed the need for an immediate ceasefire in the Basidic Strip and allowing the entry of humanitarian aid. Rad Fatouche reports from Hamas.
Jordan has hosted the first international meeting on Gaza that seeks all possible ways to boost the flow of aid into the besieged strip. King Abdullah of Jordan outlined 4 key issues to be addressed: a robust coordination mechanism on the ground, securing land crossings for a sustainable flow of assistance, and adequate stockpiles to deploy without delay. The king also warned about the deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank,
where hundreds of children have been killed and injured, while settler attacks, settlement expansion, economic sanctions, restrictions to movement of people, and violations of Muslim and Christian holy sites in Jerusalem are at their worst.
The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also addressed the meeting, raising the alarm over the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip.
More than 1 million Palestinians in Gaza do not have enough clean drinking water and face desperate levels of hunger. Over 50,000 children require treatment for acute malnutrition. And despite the ocean of needs, at least half of all humanitarian aid missions are denied access, impeded, or cancelled due to operational or security reasons.
Despite the ongoing Israeli attacks and the bleak humanitarian situation in Gaza, UNRWA's Director of Communications, Julia Tooman, said she was optimistic.
We're always hopeful. We thrive, in fact, on hope. This conference that we're hearing today comes at a timely moment. It comes just a few hours after the Security Council resolution has voted on ceasefire. We do hope that there will be recall, in fact, for the immediate implementation of that resolution, and hand in hand for substantial increase in the delivery of humanitarian assistance into Gaza.
Meanwhile, analysts believe that the recent UN Security Council resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza is a step in the right direction.
Well, as you just said, actually, the resolution you just mentioned is part of the political and diplomatic effort. However, there is a significant and important element, which is the humanitarian element, which could be supported by any political or diplomatic achievement at the international community, particularly when it comes to Security Council.
There was a consensus among all the parties to the conference on the importance of using land crossings to ensure sustainable and sufficient aid. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is unfolding because Israel controls all crossings, including Rafah, and doesn't allow aid to come in. Also, Israel continues with its genocidal onslaught against Palestinians in defiance of all international laws, and on the top, a recent ruling by the International Court of Justice. Now, questions remain. Will the latest UN Security Council resolution help stop the bloodshed in Gaza and bring peace? Babatouche, that's the area. George.
Now we got breaking news for you on Nasira TV, reporting that warplanes from the United States and UK have bombed western Al-Qadida port in Yemen. This is happening every now and then. The US and UK hitting targets inside Yemen, and then we have the Yemeni officers performing the Gaza operations against the US and UK warships and any ships destined for Israeli ports. So we're bringing up the as soon as we get to it. I think Hezbollah official has vowed a significant increase in the intensity and quantity of the resistance groups' anti-Israel attacks in response to the regime's assassination of the Hezbollah commander chief. Hashem Safiyeddin, head of Hezbollah's Executive Council, is speaking of funeral held for the resistance group commander, Khalid Sami Abdallah. The senior Hezbollah official was stressed Israel's aggression would only strengthen the resistance's resolve and would not undermine its support for Palestine. The Hezbollah commander was killed along with 4 other resistance members in an overnight Israeli air raid on southern Lebanon on Tuesday. In response to deadly attack, Hezbollah fired scores of rockets at Israeli positions in the northern occupied territories. Our Lebanon correspondent Mariam Salah joined us earlier and provided us with the latest on the escalating tensions between Israel and Hezbollah following the assassination of Hezbollah's leader.
There were some 11 operations. Perhaps in summary, we can say that Hezbollah targeted the posts of Ruwaysat al-Qarn, al-Ramsa, al-Sumakar, Ruwaysat al-Anam in the Shiba farms and the Karshuba hills, also the al-Rahab post, the Ramya post, and the Zari post. Hezbollah also considered these retaliation. I think the largest, most significant retaliation that took place was a direct targeting of the Plasan factory for armored vehicles, and this is considered one of the most significant economic and military facilities for the Israelis. We also have another attack against the direct command center for the Northern Division. And when we say Northern Division, we mean by that Northern occupied Palestine, and the Israelis consider that part of their military a very significant unit. And another, of course, significant strike against Meroon, the Maroon Air Base, which has been targeted by Hezbollah. Hezbollah said in their statement that they targeted an area that was on the eastern side, which has not been targeted before. But we also see that the Israelis continue their strikes in several areas. We had artillery fire, especially in areas of Harfa, Jabain, Ba'ib, and Ait Harun. We noticed that there were a lot of attacks in that area, in that vicinity, and Hezbollah had not always only retaliate for their commanders, they also retaliate for their members. We've seen that every time there is an assassination of a member and every time there is a killing of a civilian, Hezbollah, of course, retaliates.
Yemeni Security Intelligence Service has arrested members of an American Israeli spy cell. Some of the spies have been active since the 1990s, conducting different acts of sabotage. As a report from Saudi.
In a landmark operation, Yemen Security and Intelligence Service has successfully arrested a spy cell working for CIA and Mossad. According to Yemeni security officials, the spy network had been active since the 1990s. Over the years, these officers engaged in various acts of sabotage aimed at undermining and destroying state institutions. Their activities specifically targeted the military capabilities of the Yemeni army, posing a substantial threat to the country's national security.
This operation is not only a new achievement for the Yemeni army and people, but also an achievement for the resistance as a whole. This achievement represents a very painful blow to the enemy, as it has lost its sources of information on the ground. This also has created great confusion in its ranks, since in this period of time it needs information about the locations of launching ballistic missiles and drones.
The activities included collecting accurate data on the number of weapons in Sana'a held by residents and providing analysis of the security situation. The spies also recruited government employees, including officers in security services, to work for the CIA. U.S. intelligence was also provided with databases containing important information about airstrips and military camps across Yemen. Observers say this significant breakthrough highlights the ongoing efforts of Yemen Security and Intelligence Service to safeguard the country's national security and counteract foreign espionage activities. It also underscores the importance of closely monitoring the activities of all international bodies on the ground, especially those run by the U.S. Sana.
Campaigning for Iran's upcoming presidential election is ongoing. All the 6 contenders in the race for the top executive job are holding events to rule voters. The interim administrator tasked with organizing the electoral process says that the campaigning will go on until 4 hours before the election day. That's June the 28th. The equal time rule is specified for the contenders for radio and television broadcasts, including live debates, cultural and economic roundtables, as well as documentaries. They all have the opportunity to unveil their plans through speeches and manifestos to attract voters. The snap election is to be held to pick a successor to late President Ibrahim Raisi, who lost his life in a copter crash on May 19th. That's a wrap for this news bulletin. Goodbye.
A diverse range of programs. Spirituality. Youth. Eastern Tales. Roundtable discussions. Culture. Politics. All produced by IRIB English Radio.
Joe Biden has become the first sitting American president to be sued for complicity in genocide over the United States' aid to the Israeli regime's ongoing genocidal war in Gaza. We take a look at some of the world press and media's coverage of this story. Please stay with us. The website CCR Justice has covered this story and tells us more. U.S. rights groups have filed an appeal against U.S. President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin for their complicity in the Israeli regime's months-long genocide of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The Center for Constitutional Rights, the New York Civil Liberties Group, filed an appeal on Monday, 10th of June, on behalf of the Palestinian human rights organizations Al-Haq and Defense for Children International, as well as Palestinians in Gaza and Palestinian Americans in the United States. In their appeal at the 9th District Court of Appeals in San Francisco, California, the plaintiff's lawyers asserted that President Biden, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin were complicit in the ongoing Israeli genocide in Gaza. The genocide which has so far massacred more than 37,000 Palestinians since last October. The original lawsuit filed in November in federal court was dismissed in January on jurisdictional grounds. One of the Palestinian plaintiffs in the case, who has lost 5 members of her family in the Israeli regime's brutal atrocities in Gaza, said she had vowed to seek justice. Layla al-Haddad said, "I promised my surviving family members in Gaza that I would do everything in my power to advocate on their behalf." Meanwhile, a prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, the ICC, Karim Khan, has sought an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's War Minister Yoav Gallant over the war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Israeli regime in the Gaza Strip. Karim Khan announced recently he had reasonable grounds to believe that the Israeli Prime Minister and his military chief bear criminal responsibility for the war crimes and crimes against humanity committed on the Palestinian population of Gaza. Their war crimes included ordering targeted attacks on the Palestinian civilians and their starvation due to Israel's month-long blockade of water and food to the people trapped in the region. The ICC prosecutor's decision was rejected by Israel's backers in the West. U.S. President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, as well as other Western politicians, opposed the ICC prosecutor's demand for arrest warrants for the warmongering Zionist leaders. British newspaper The Independent has also covered the same story and tells us more. Joe Biden sears his name in history by becoming the first sitting American president to be sued for complicity in genocide over the United States' aid to the Israeli regime's ongoing genocidal war against the Gaza Strip. The first hearing in the case was being held in the federal courthouse in Oakland, California. Human rights bodies and Palestinian U.S. citizens were plaintiffs in the lawsuit. The Center for Constitutional Rights filed the lawsuit on behalf of Dr. Omar al-Najjar, a physician at Nasser Medical Complex in the city of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza Strip, as well as Palestinian human rights groups, Defense for Children International, Palestine Al-Haq. The lawsuit also sued U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. The Israeli regime has been waging war against Gaza since 7th of October last year, following an operation carried out by Palestinian resistance groups. The United States has been providing the war with all-out military and political support. It has armed the Israeli regime with more than 15,000 tons of military hardware and blocked ratification of all United Nations Security Council resolutions that have called for cessation of Israeli aggression in Gaza. The lawsuit states if the legal responsibility to prevent an unfolding genocide is to mean anything, indeed if the rule of law is to signify anything, courts of law must have a role and responsibility to enforce those foundational international law principles. The lives of so many people are at stake. Sadaf Doof, a first justice fellow with the Center for Constitutional Rights, told The Independent, "I'm certainly not aware of another sitting U.S. president who has had charges of complicity in genocide brought against him in federal courts of law or against his senior cabinet members. A testament in and of itself of the gravity of the U.S. significant role in this genocide." The International Court of Justice, the ICJ, which is the United Nations top court, ordered the Israeli regime to take all measures within its power to prevent genocide in Gaza. Iran's Press TV has also covered the same story and tells us more. U.S. President Joe Biden finds himself between a rock and a hard place for his role in the Israeli war against Palestinians in what global consensus accepts as a genocide in Gaza. And it's not by accident that the American president got himself entangled with pro-Palestinian protesters inside the United States amid a massive student movement sweeping the country. A dominant narrative in mainstream American media points to the irony that during the time Biden facilitated Netanyahu's genocidal war in Gaza, he was supported by all pro-Israel apologists. The Islamic Republic of Iran says the United States and Israel lost the war in Gaza and must be held accountable for genocide against the Palestinians. Speaking to reporters and media managers on Sunday, 9th of June, Nasser Kanani, the spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry, said the United States is complicit in Israel's crimes against Palestinians in Gaza by providing the Israeli regime with fully fledged support. Kanani added, the Israeli regime, with all of its military capabilities and political influence, lost the battle against the Palestinians of Gaza. he emphasized the biggest reason in this war against the people of Gaza, in addition to the usurping Israeli regime, is the United States government. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman said nations and governments are duty-bound to hold the U.S. government accountable for extending fully fledged and unconditional support for the Israeli regime. Nasser Kanani highlighted the important role that the nations of this world can play in holding Israel accountable for crimes against humanity in Gaza. He also noted that the media can also play a leading role in supporting the Palestinians. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman described support for the oppressed Palestinians as a global responsibility and said resistance groups in the region have demonstrated their firm determination in this regard. Nasser Kanani pointed out that resistance tactics in the region prove that it will never yield to pressure of the arrogant powers.
The first methodology that the Quran uses is to talk to the emotional side of the human being.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا O you who believe استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة.
And we have set forth for mankind in this Quran full of examples.
Then that, a lecture on Islamic issues. Islam is the way of life, a complete way. It's a complete way.
Dear listeners of IRIB English Radio, Assalamu alaikum. Now let's listen to the speech of Sheikh Ja'far.
I begin in the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. Due to that kindness and mercy that we have these opportunities where we gather in glorification and remembrance of Him, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. We are discussing the journey towards self-reformation and how to become the best servant that we can. We said that one of the biggest obstacles that we have on that journey is riyah, showing off. So we do things for other people rather than the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And last week, we looked at different traditions and verses of the Holy Quran which equate this act of riyah, of showing off, to shirk or nifaq, to either associating partners to God or being a hypocrite. Understanding, the severity of this sin, an important question that we have to ask ourselves, and this is where we have to be really honest with ourselves, is, do I have riyah? Am I a person who shows off? Am I a person who seeks the attention of others rather than the attention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? As reflective human beings, these are the type of questions that we should always be asking ourselves. We need to be our own therapist. We need to be our own counselor sometimes to be able to identify these things. And the more honest we are, the more progress we will make towards Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. To answer this question, a similar question was posed to Allama Marhum Faiz Kashani, who is the writer or the author of Mahajjat al-Bayda, the masterpiece in akhlaq that we have. And he was asked the same question. He said, how do I know if I am sincere, if I am a Muslim for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he answers, very beautifully. He says that if you were always doing something, whether it was reciting dua, whether it was giving azan, whether it was reading a prayer, whether it was giving a khutbah, and then someone else started doing that. Someone else started giving azan, someone else started doing dua, someone else was selected to read the lecture or to lead the prayers, and if it bothers you inside that this person is now doing it, that is an indication that you are never doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Powerful. It's powerful because these type of things happen all the time. Sadly, they happen all the time. We give a lecture, someone happens, and then what do? We criticize after. Yeah, but he did this, but he did that. We should have done it like this. As if we were the only ones who were doing it perfectly always. Now, this is not just in matters of ibadat as well, right? As we know, our entire should be grateful that the work of God is being done. And if it's being done by me or someone else, I should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's being done. You know, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we feel that without us, nothing would happen. Yeah? If I wasn't there, this wouldn't happen. If I wasn't there, this wouldn't happen. And the work of God doesn't need me. I need God. Yeah? I need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah just uses me. If it's not me, He will use someone else because the work of Allah will always be done. Right? And so we have to get to this point where we have this clarity within our hearts to find out whether or not we are doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. We get another description of checking to see how we know whether our actions were sincere for God from a very beautiful tradition narrated by Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Where he says, Salatu ala matil mura'id. Because there are three characteristics that let you know whether a person is a show-off. Yeah? When we say show-off, you know, it doesn't have to be like a big show-off, you know. You know, sometimes there are people who are show-offs, and you know they're show-offs, right? So we're talking about even the smallest degree of showing off for others rather than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we've repeated this. You know, Allah likes show-off, you know. But He likes us showing off for Him, not for others. Whereas you look, I'm doing these things to get closer to you, to earn your pleasure, to make you happy. Allah loves that. So when we start doing that for others, that is when we become problematic. The Imam says there are three characteristics. Number one, يَنْشُطُ إِذَا رَأَى النَّاسِ وَيَقْتَلُ إِذَا كَانَ وَحْدًا وَيُحِبُّ أَنْ يُحْمَدَ فِي جَمِيعِ أُمُورِهِ. The three characteristics, he says, number one, that they are energetic and active when they are around people. But they are lazy, and it's true that they are lazy when they are by themselves. And number three, they love to be praised for everything that they do. They love praise. The first and the second can be lumped up together, where they are energetic when they are around people, but when they are alone, they are lazy. They don't have that same drive. You know? We see this in many different aspects of our existence. This happens to us at work all the time, right? That if our manager or boss is not there, we're on our phones or browsing different websites, or the manager comes and we toggle back to what we were supposed to be doing, right? But these are small examples. It happens regularly where I am more inclined towards doing more ibadat when I'm around people. Now, that in itself is not problematic, you know, because sometimes we do get energy from people. But if I don't do some of those things at home, then I should be asking myself, what am I doing really? So for example, if I don't pray the 2 rakat nawafil of Isha at home, but I do it when I'm in public, I have to ask myself, what exactly am I doing, right? If, for example, I have good akhlaq in front of all of you, but at home I have terrible akhlaq with my family. Right? In private, I have problems, but in public I am a saint. Publicly I demonstrate piety, but when I'm alone I commit all types of indecencies. I watch things which are inappropriate, I do things which are inappropriate, but outside everyone thinks I'm an angel. These are signs of hypocrisy, right? These are signs that let us know that there is a problem with what we are doing. And the responsibility here is what, right? The responsibility is to take these positives that we're doing in public and try to incorporate them into our private life. It's not to abandon them altogether, right? Because then Shaitan wins completely. Shaitan was winning, and now I abandon it because I don't want to have riyah. Shaitan has won masterfully. But I need to incorporate these things that I'm comfortable doing publicly in my private life. And that is the way I then learn to be the same as I am publicly as I am privately. The third is they love to be praised for their work, right? When they are around others, people are saying, MashaAllah, good job, I feel more inclined towards working. You know, the fact is that everyone loves to be praised. And this is a reality, this is who we are. We like to be acknowledged for what we do. However, the praise should not be the motivation for our action. Right? The praise is a byproduct. The praise is something that comes by it. But when the praise becomes the motivation for our action, then the praise alone is our reward. And when we get to Allah, there is nothing else that is awaiting us at that time. You know, what we understand from these 3 points that the Imam alayhi salam mentioned is something I think is really interesting. You know, is that the expectation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that we should be the same in private as we are in public. That if I am doing something privately, I do it publicly. And if I do something publicly, I should do it privately. Because it's the private environment when the most laziness takes place. The true nature of our existence takes place. And if I can master my private life, I will have tremendous benefits because it will then trickle down to my public life.
You're listening to Voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This program entitled Minbar. Our email address is EnglishRadio.
In Britain, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has insisted tax cuts will be on offer in the Conservative Party's manifesto. Sunak also dismissed rumours that he might resign ahead of the general election on 4th of July. We take a look at the British media's coverage of this story. Please stay with us. PA Media, the Press Association, has covered the story and tells us more. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has insisted tax cuts will be on offer in the Conservative Party's manifesto as he urged Tory voters not to have their heads turned by Nigel Farage. The Prime Minister, who earlier on Monday dismissed rumours that he might resign ahead of polling day on 4th of July, also acknowledged it has become harder for people to own their first homes under the Conservatives. His remarks came during the first of a series of 30-minute leadership interviews by Nick Robinson, for the BBC. Speaking on the eve of the manifesto launch, Rishi Sunak said, "We will have a manifesto tomorrow that deals on all the things that we've just gone through. That we've already announced in this campaign that yes, does continue to cut people's taxes, because I believe in a country where people's hard work is rewarded. And there's a clear choice in contrast at this election. Our party, the Conservatives, are promising and will deliver tax cuts, building on tax cuts that we have already started to deliver and have ruled out tax rises. And that's not what the Labour Party are doing. They're being open that some taxes are going to go up. But what they're not telling everybody is that there is a £2,000 tax bill waiting for working families across our country if they're elected. Figures provided by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, have previously showed that Britain's current level of tax burden is the highest on record. Statistics published late last year showed tax hit 35.3% of gross domestic product or GDP in 2022-2023, a 0.9% increase from the previous year. This ratio is forecast to grow to 37.7% by 2029, but the government's squeeze on tax ratios is the dominant driver. Prime Minister Sunak last week denied accusations from Labour leader Keir Starmer that he lied by saying Labour would hike taxes by £2,000 in a claim criticised by the UK Statistics Watchdog. The Prime Minister also said he did not want to talk about personalities when challenged about Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. He said, "So the choice for everybody, there's only going to be one of two people who's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer or myself. A vote for anyone who's not a Conservative candidate is just making it more likely that Keir Starmer is that person." So if you ask someone, You know what makes the Conservative. If you're someone who wants lower taxes, if you want your pension protected, if you want migration reduced, if you want a sensible approach to net zero, that prioritizes our security and reducing people's bills, that's what I will offer you in this election. After being told by BBC's Nick Robinson that he was viewed by Conservatives as a quinoa salad, and Nigel Farage as a Sunday roast with all the trimmings, Mr. Sunak said he believes that policies are what matters. He said, the simple issue here is a vote for anyone else, including Nigel Farage's party, and I would make the same point about anyone else's party, is ultimately a vote that makes it more likely that Keir Starmer will be in power. On the situation for the first-time buyers, Sunak said, it has got harder and I want to make sure that it's easier, and what we will do is not just build homes in the right places and do that in a way that is sensitive to local communities, but make sure that we support young people into great jobs so they can stay without supported. Labour Deputy Leader Andrew Rayner said, which is Sunak's concession that having the home of your own has got harder under his ruling, is a damning indictment of 14 years of housing failure. Andrew Rayner added, home ownership is a pipe dream for young people in Britain today. Never once in 14 years have the Tories met their £300,000 a year housing target, and their recent decision to exceed the Tory MPs on their taxation and abolish mandatory housing targets has seen house building take a nosedive. Earlier on Monday, 10th of June, Sunak responded to the continued fallout over its early departure from D-Day commemorations in France. Criticism of its early exit from the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landing shocked the Prime Minister over the weekend, and he kept a close profile and avoided questions from the speakers. During a campaign visit on Monday, 10th of June in Clinton and West Sussex, with a viewership of 2177, told journalists who would not stop fighting for the future of our country. Asked whether resigning had cost his life, Sunak told journalists, no, of course not. I'm energized about the vision that we're putting forward for people. The campaign probably went halfway through yet, finding enormous amounts of support for the policies that are sitting on the table. Regarding rumours, he also told reporters on the campaign trail people are going to say what they're going to say. The Prime Minister also struck a renewed conciliatory tone over his D-Day departure, telling reporters he absolutely didn't mean to cause anyone any hurt or upset. The Guardian has also covered the same story. Conservative right-wingers are planning to present the Sunak as demand for tougher action on immigration and human rights law before the election if the Prime Minister's manifesto promises and should they fall flat. Prominent Conservative Party figures including Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick are said by Tory insiders to be among those voting to see how the manifesto is received by the British public. In the event that Sunak's launch fails to shift the dial on the Tories' slandering election campaign, one option under discussion is a press conference next week to set out a series of alternative Conservative surveys. They are facing supervisor and already weakened Sunak, who vows to fight on until the last day of the campaign after a terrible weekend in which he was criticized for missing part of the D-Day ceremony in France. On the campaign trail in West Sussex on Monday, 10th of June, Prime Minister Sunak said he believes he could still win back voters and he did not accept that the election result was a foregone conclusion. Asked if he had considered quitting, Sunak said, of course not. He said he was energized by the campaign after ministers were forced to insist he would not be replaced as leader during the course of the campaign. In the run-up to the publication of the Conservative manifesto, MPs on the right of the party launched a last-ditch attempt to toughen up the position of the UK's membership in the European Convention on Human Rights. resources from the new conservative thinking, they have pushed hard for a neutral referendum on European Court of Human Rights membership or forward call. A lot of us will be making our position clear in the public, one MP said. One former cabinet minister said it was plausible for the rebel manifesto could be published in days ahead, with counter-positions on tax and immigration. We'll just have to see what emerges from there. However, the Guardian understands that Prime Minister Sunak is expected to pledge to reform the terms of Britain's membership of the European Court of Human Rights and to keep all options on the table, including leaving the European Court of Human Rights if it fails. One conservative source said Sunak doesn't want to leave. This is just language that sees the voice of the party. Just listen to the voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting. The voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran is broadcast daily from 1930 to 2030 UTC on the following